So, hi, good day, everyone. I am here to continue our topic about the social cultural impact of tourism. So, since we are already done with the visitor host interaction, we are now going to proceed to the positive social impact of tourism. So, I have here four positive social impact of tourism. And number one is social change and multicultural understanding. So, one of the major motivating factors for travel is to meet new people and to learn different cultures. And this can lead to a greater understanding between people living in different societies. The the impact of this is that it can create a more open-minded and tolerant generation that can more easily understand other cultures and ways of life. And I think this is the best way to break down stereotypes and prejudice. So we all have this preconceived notion about certain people or certain groups of people based on the things that we see on social media, on television, dramas that we watch. And take, for example, the Russian people. We all have these ideas that Russians are grim and they don't smile. But actually, if you travel to Russia, you can actually find out that Russian people don't smile without a reason. For them, smiling without a reason can actually make you look like a secretive person who isn't open about his your own self, or like you have a lot of secrets and you're not true to what you actually what you actually perceive. So the next one is the adaptation to the realities of modern life and improvement of the host country's lifestyle. So it's not just employment, opportunities, and income that the sector can offer. Often, better quality infrastructures must be built to support the industry, and the local population benefits from improved roads and water supplies, internet access, and waste disposal. And the local population actually benefits from this improvement in the long run rather than the tourists, because tourists will not really stay in the destination for a long time, right? Bo- so huge amount of money are invested to preserve the local heritage and to improve the infrastructure, to provide better local facilities, and which can create a better education, better leisure facilities, organizing frequent social events, and thus a better lifestyle for the local people. The locals will interact with the tourists and mix with people from diverse backgrounds, which creates a cosmopolitan culture in the region. Also, due to the demand for better services, varied employment opportunities are created within the region, and therefore people do not feel the need to migrate to other cities, earn for their living. Furthermore, the locals will have a permanent job or source of income, which will then make their living status improve. And I think this is an social impact, because when your social status will improve or living status will improve, it means that um you're living a comfortable life where you are able to provide for your needs, and actually provide also for the ones that are not actually that necessarily or that necessary to for you to be able to live with. And next is use of foreign languages. As I've said earlier, when there is tourism, the local people will actually interact with the tourists. They will mix with them, and when you interact with people, you need to communicate. And the medium for communication is language. So the majority of tourist attractions demand that visitors speak English, or at least or visitors speak English as well as the host that can speak English fluently, because it is currently the world's most widely used language and because it has significant economic benefits for the tourism sector. And actually, in well managed tourism developments, local people are encouraged to undertake education and training to be able to take part or feel the development of their community. And an example of this is when way back in 2018 when the Chinese embassy in Nepal, in coordination with Nepal's Ministry of Culture, Tourism, and Civil Aviation, organized a 6-month long Chinese language training course for Nepalese tourism professionals. And during the language training, the participants were also provided with training on Chinese culture, food, paper cutting, and knot making, and calligraphy, among others. And I think it is also necessary for people to learn different language when there is tourism in a certain community or a certain area, because how can how can you develop that certain tourist attraction if you can't be able to communicate with people, right? So let's proceed to the fourth and the final one, which is the improvement of health conditions and disease control. So the direct impact of tourism in the health sector is that it can help in the development of infrastructures, like healthcare infrastructure such as health centers, hospitals, sewages and drainages, with the with the generated income coming from the industry. So the people or the local community will benefit from this in the long run, since, as I said earlier, the tourists will not stay in a certain destination for a long time. So they will not be able to use those built infrastructures for a long time. And aside from that, tourism can also promote proper hygiene for the local residents in a certain destination by providing or implementing programs and policies for them to follow, such as like providing programs such as cleanup drive, which can also promote the overall environmental health of the area. And this this environment, this you know this improved environmental health can also improve the health conditions of the people living in the area. And aside from that, studies actually have provided linkage between the tourism industry and the health of the people. So I will read this study for you. So according to the study, there are several potential pathways to the positive impacts of tourism activities in public health via positive emotions and social interaction between tourists and residents. Tourism experiences are inseparable from tourists' emotions and can therefore influence physical health and longevity. It has been suggested that frequent experiences of positive emotions lead to a lower chance of developing cardiovascular diseases, inflammation, headaches, weaknesses, and congestion. Other health outcomes of positive emotional experiences include exercise, healthy eating, improved quality of sleep, and overcoming bad habits. So according to this study, people who travel are less susceptible to acquire certain diseases, especially heart diseases, since they are they have boosted their positive emotions because they interact with people. And when you interact with people, certain emotions will be boosted, and these emotions are actually the positive emotions. And aside from that, when there is a certain tourist destination being developed in a certain area, job opportunities will be offered to the local community. And this can help provide the local people in the community with a permanent source of income for them, which can greatly help in their living status. And when they have an improved living status, they will worry less about their daily lives, because can get, or they can provide now for their daily needs that the that they are not actually able to provide for themselves when there was no development happening in the area. So these are the following positive social impacts of tourism. We have the social we have the social change and multicultural understanding. Number two is under adaptation to the realities of modern life and improvement of the host country's lifestyle. Number three is the use of foreign language. Number four is the improvement of health conditions and disease control. So the negative health or the negative social impact of tourism will be them introduced and be discussed by Jerosa, which she will be proceed which will proceed next. Bye guys.
So, good afternoon, everyone. I am here to present the negative social impacts of tourism. So, in the tourism industry, there have been a significant number of negative social impacts that has been identified, and these are mainly connected or related to the conflict between the tourists and the host communities. So, in this presentation, I'm going to talk about the 4 negative social impacts of tourism. And let's start with social saturation. So social saturation, diri na belong ang overcrowding and congestion. So social saturation happens when a destination reached its limitation in carrying capacity of accommodating tourists. So in other words nga, kanang overcrowding. This usually happens during peak season, but in some cases, especially sa katong super popular na jud nga mga destinations, even lean season, daghan gihapon tao. So, in other words, murag nahug nga wala sila lean season kay mao nga kanang anytime bisag unsa nga date, sa unsa nga oras kay daghan gihapon tao. And in many destinations, the high number of tourists, the occupation and privatization of public space led to different kinds of discomfort and growing protests. And nako example dere, in many highly tourist cities such as the Venice, they are witnessing a rapid and increasingly fierce resistance of residents to tourists even in the off-season. So sa Venice, local residents is showing disapproval sa mga tourists. It's because gisamukan na sila sa kadaghang tourist nga ni-visit sa ilahang place. And this shows a worrying rise in politicization and in some cases explicit rejection of temporary visitors. So yes, nabot na sila sa point nga ilahan nang i-reject ang tourists because nakasamok na sila sa ilahang daily life. Hence, we have this what we call over-tourism, which means the increase in tourist numbers at such high volumes that it negatively impacts local residents, other visitors, and the surrounding environment of a particular destination. In other words, nasobra na jud ang pag-visit sa mga tourists sa isa ka destination. And at this point, residents and other stakeholders react strongly in disagreement and opposes the tourism growth in itself because their quality of life is affected and threatened by over-tourism. So, mo na siya ang gikuan sa social saturation. Next, we have the changes in social structure, behavior and roles. So, for this negative impact, this is mainly related to the negative demonstrative effect, which I'm gonna talk about later. Nara siya diri nasulod sa 4 negative impacts. So, because of tourism, changes in the social structure, behavior, and roles are seems to be more prevalent. For example, people dress in accordance with social expectation, in which we can say that it's mainly influenced by tourism because people tend to adopt to foreign fashion, and which becomes a trend. And it's because it became a trend, people will go and follow. So for example, ani is ang Korean fashion. Diba? Since now is very kuan na kaayo, relevant kaayo ang Korean culture diri sa Philippines. And because of that, people tend to follow or adopt the Korean fashion, which is ang term pa sa ilaha is what they call that, aesthetic. Yes, aesthetic na fashion. And At some point, you conform to social expectations. So, mauna lagi. And those people who preferred conservative clothing is often labeled as manang manamit or so tawag na, why sense of fashion. While those people who opt to follow revealing clothes or foreign influenced fashion is called fashionista. Kaya di ba nisabay sila sa uso. Ang katong mga na left behind is gi-labelan sila as manang kuno manamit. Kaya wala lagi sila ni follow sa trend. And another one is people are now slowly disregarding some of our social norms. Diba? Here in the Philippines, pag mano or bless or amin is our way of showing respect to our elders. However, young people of today's generation prefers beso rather than mano. And this is because, not mainly because of tourism, but in a sense nga naka-create ang tourism of bridge nga nganong na-adapt na sa mga tao ang kanang beso instead nga mupadayon ta sa mano na to nga tradition. And according there is a notes, tourism changes the traditional forms of employment which results in the lowering of the status of agricultural workers. Kay people opt to excuse me, opt to, what they call that, invest themselves or choose to work in the tourism industry instead of doing agricultural works. Kaya di ba mas laisyo ko na paminahon or I don't know. Yes. And then, oh, the migration of the population and the breaking up of families. So why do you think that migration of the population and the breaking up of families is a negative impact of social is a negative social impact of tourism? So, diba, mainly because when you travel, you see different kinds of, what do you call that, beautiful sceneries that you engage or you indulge in. So, for example, na kay scenery, for example, sa Switzerland, di ba, nindot man kay ang ilahang mga sceneries dito, nindot kay sila mga beautiful natural resources. And then, if ganahan ka nga, mauna, pirmi ang imuhang, tawag na, makitaan, so di ba, magkuan ka decision nga, what if mo migrate ka sa Switzerland, kaya per adto na ko dito, di na ko mo travel para lang makita ato nga attraction or scenery. So di ba makakuan siya sa influence of migration sa mga tao. And of course, the breaking up of families. Kung ganahan mo migrate, then ang ubang members ng families dili, then of course, maguba dyan. I mean, not maguba, necessarily maguba, but magbulag. Yes. Ano? And also here, they also disregard social norms such as respect for elders, as I've mentioned earlier. And of course, young women who enter the workforce have changed their traditional dress to tourist clothes. Yes, na-mention sa ko na ganiya. And then, tourism in some areas leads to other social problems in the family. Some wives who work in tourism establishments have higher salaries than their husbands. So, di ba, mainly, tourism industry is mainly dominated by women compared to other industries nga ang men mo nag-dominate. So, dili, nahimo siya nga negative impact is because some wives who works in the tourism industry have higher salaries compared to their husbands who work for other industries. And it states here that it often leads to loss of self-respect among their husbands. So, basta na ay kanang, ano tawag na, na ay term na, nakalimot ko. Dili ganahan ng ilahang husband nga mas higher og salary ang ilahang wives compared nila. Yes. And this has led to higher divorce rate kay some wives change or improve their way of dressing and grooming causes their husbands to be jealous and suspicious. Since because tourism industry is more on not necessarily more on but kung ano siya sa grooming kay you need to be kuan man tawa na presentable when of course facing tourists. So yeah, that's all for the changes in the social structure, behavior, and roles. Let's move on to the third negative impact, which is community problems, which includes prostitution and criminal activity. But na ako ipunaan na later on niya. Kay, according to my research. So next, so aside from community development, of course, tourism can also generate problems or challenges. Tourism may be used as a scapegoat for general loosening of morals such as prostitution and hedonistic travel. So, na-mention naman tani sa una pag sustainable tourism nato nga subject if you can still remember. So first is prostitution or sex tourism. It is often called as the oldest profession. So ngano bitawng gi-refer ang prostitution as the oldest profession? It is because as soon as a civilization began trading and developing wealth, certain members of that civilization would accept goods or money in exchange for sex. Yes. So di ba sa una, kung may term nila di ba if kanang mahog ba ni siya nga term sa kanang kapit sa patalim? Dira ba na drugs? Kay of course especially if you're a girl or a woman and then if naglisod na jud sa kanang sa kinabuhi like maka-opt ka o decide nga what if ibalyo na lang nimo imong lawas para lang naa kay kwarta nga mahatag na kay mapalit nga pagkaon na kay ma-provide sa imong family. And as tourism affords employment for women, this in turn may lead to their liberalization and involvement in prostitution. These days, most tourists, while planning for vacation, are on the lookout for places where they can explore possibilities of uninhibited sex, not necessarily with their own partners. So like, nahog nga scapegoat jud siya sa loosening of morals is because especially no karon nga days where most of the people are liberated like mo-opt na lang dili mo-opt like na jud sila kuan sa ilang mindset ba nga while mag-travel is at if kanang mga experience nga one night stand in ana not necessarily with their own partners. So yeah, it says that this would include sexual encounters and sexual surprises as a way of enhancing their travel experience. So, ang ubang mindset sa tourist sad no kay if they travel, if night sex or they engage themselves in sex, mas better kuno ang travel experience according to them. Well, para nila guro. And then though tourism is not because of sexual exploitation, it provides easy access to it. This has caused many young people, including children, to trade their bodies in exchange for money. So, mato siya kung gi-mention ganiha. And sakto man sad, dili man sad ang tourism mo'y nag-provide or unsa tawag ana nagkuan jud sa prostitution. But tourism gives an easy access to prostitution. Kaya lagi, ma-travel sila para happy-happy. Certain tourism destinations have become centers for this illegal trade, frequented by pedophiles and supported by networks of pimps. So, na ako na search, according to this is These are the list of the top 10 sex tourism destinations in the world. And oh my God, it's very surprising. So first in the list is Germany. Kaya napajud sila nihatag a description about sa ilahang prostitution dito. So first is Germany. Very organized when it comes to sex tourism. Prostitution and even street prostitution is legal here and is widespread and much organized. So sa Germany, legal ang prostitution, even street prostitution. So nadyo'y uban nga countries nga legalize nila ang prostitution compared to sa Philippines nga illegal jud siya. Next is the Netherlands, regarded as the paradise for sex enthusiasts. It is considered to be one of the most popular sex tourism destinations in the world. Here, prostitution is also legal and at the same time regulated. So, regulate ang na dito. So, Netherlands is the most popular sex tourism destination ko, no? It's a paradise for sex enthusiasts. Next, we have Colombia. Legal sad sa Colombia, but the government is taking efforts to curb the gray areas and the legal aspects of it. Next is Thailand, Asia's most sought after destination and pocket-friendly too. Right? Barato ra ko, no? Draws a huge number of international tourists who come to enjoy the naughty side of it. So, dahan ko no sa Thailand and barato ra sad. Next is Dominican Republic. When it comes to the export of sex workers, the country ranks 4th highest in the world. Next is Spain. Oh my God. It's not just the vibrant club and bar scenes at the happening party destinations in Spain like Madrid, Ibiza, and Barcelona, which have also become popular sex tourism destinations. So that considers Spain. And next is Malaysia. Though prostitution is illegal in Malaysia, it is still abundantly available and widely practiced. Next is Kenya. It is one of the largest sex tourism industries in the continent. Interestingly, Kenya is a popular destination among older white women who wants to buy some time with a man. Oh my God! Older white women. Next, oh my God, Philippines! Appeal dyan ang Philippines. Huge industry domestically with over 800,000 men, women, and children working in the trade. The girly bars that were prevalent during World War II is believed to be the reason behind the country's international image as a sex destination. So, appeal dyan ang Philippines. And lastly, Brazil. Yet another place where prostitution is legal. However, it is illegal to operate a brothel or to employ sex workers. Nevertheless, dozens of brothels fill the cities where prostitution engaged in sexual activities still function here. So those were the top 10 when it comes to sex tourism destinations. Next, let's proceed to, di ba na-mention ako ganyan ang hedonistic travel, and I'm sure familiarized naman mo sa hedonistic travel, di ba? Ibiza is a popular hedonistic destination and has become an idyllic enclave for non-conformists, hippies, party animals, and celebrities and wealthy yacht owner alike. So, ato dito katong mga grabe kayo maka-party, inom, yeah. Next is, di ba ganiha sa prostitution I've mentioned earlier nga included ang children, especially young girls, nga forcefully or their choice nga mukuan sa prostitution. And here, another community problems nga ako ang i-appeal is ang child labor. It is one of the worst consequences of the mass tourism in many countries around the world. The laboring activity in tourism is particularly harmful for children as it exposes them to all kinds of abuses and put them in a threat at the contact with adult tourists. So, sa child labor, it can be obvious nga work such as kanang mga sales of postcards, mga souvenirs and trinkets, animal ride services, drinks and food services, o sa uban nga kanang i-hire sa mga ubang establishments as kanang parker, kanang magkuan sa parking ba, kay barato ra and then mautoy ra ang kanang ihatag nila nga sweldo. But aside sa kanang obvious nga trabaho, I mean, ano tawag ano kanang dili aside sa kanang makita jud ba nga ang bata jud may nagtrabaho, pwede sad siya kanang hidden behind the walls such as kanang housekeeping, helping in the kitchen, and other domestic tasks. So kanang mga kasamba, not necessarily kasambahay, but kanang mga domestic workers lagi. So, recent developments in the travel and tourism trade seem to reinforce the trend towards more precarious and flexible employment conditions. For many of these jobs, young children are often recruited because they are cheap and flexible employees. In other words, moto ra jud ang mga bata. So mo nang ubang establishments, they prefer to hire underage children. Okay? Wala pa'y alamag sa kanang sa industry. And of course, mauturan nila ang bayad kay wala man sila kabalo sa kanang sa tawag ana regular wage o regular sa tawag ana ay basta kanang nakalimot ko. Wait sa jud. Minimum, yes. Minimum wage. Wala sila kasabot ana. Next is another community problem is job level friction. In some developing countries, due to lack of professional training, many jobs occupied by local people in the tourism industry are a lower level, such as housekeeping, waiters, and other practical works, while higher paying and more prestigious managerial jobs go to foreigners or urbanized nationals. Excuse me. And in line with this is the seasonal employment where people are hired for a temporary work to meet an organization's temporary needs during certain times of their year. So, more specifically during the peak season, kay mag-hire dyan na og extra workers ang mga establishments during their peak season kay of course kulangan ang ilang manpower. And kay peak season man daghang tourist nga moadto so they need more manpower. So, nahaw nga seasonal. And the last one is the crime generation, dere, sa community problems or criminal activity. Crime rates typically increase with the growth and urbanization of an area, and growth of mass tourism is often accompanied by increase in crime. The presence of a large number of tourists with a lot of money to spend and often carrying valuables such as cameras and brings with it activities like robbery and drug dealings. So of course, katong mga I'm sorry. Kanang mga tourists nga mo visit there sa Philippines, for example, di ba wala man kay sila knowledge about ana nga place. And some of the people nga kanang i-take advantage nila nga naay tourist nga mga ri, they will take the chance to rob and mag-kuan og criminal activity kay of course wala may alamag ang mga tourist. Wala alamag ang mga tourist about sa kuan. And then ang mga tourist diba kada usually i-perceive na to sila as daghang kwarta, mga mahalon ang gamit. That's why it take advantage sad na sa ubang mga criminals nga i-target nila ang mga tourists. Very often, this is not related to local people but occurs as a result of criminal gangs moving into the area to exploit tourists and sometimes local people as well. So, di ba, hasta ang mga locals utay mabiktima sad. Kay lagi, kung sa makitaan, hala, go. One example ani is katong hinumdum pa mo katong gimension ni Miss sa una sa katong tour bus hijacking incident in the Philippines where 8 Chinese tourists were killed sa katong gi-hijack nga bus. Isa to siya sa example sa criminal activity. And the last negative social impacts that I'm going to tackle this afternoon is the negative demonstrative effect. So, na-mention ko na siya ganyan sa number 2, which is changes in the behaviors, social structure, and roles. So here, the demonstration effect has been observed as a natural consequence of tourism. Local people may copy the lifestyle, according to, balik. Local people may copy the lifestyles of tourists through the demonstration effect. And according to Williams in 1998, simply observing tourists will lead to behavioral changes. Under these conditions is that local people will note the superior material possessions of the visitors and aspire to these. And this is considered disruptive because locals became resentful because they are unable to obtain goods and lifestyle demonstrated by the visitors. So, diba, kanang ganing dali kita maka-adapt sa mga kuan sa mga tourists. For example, ang kanang kato nga time nga nauso ang example. Basta kanang lifestyle nga ipakita sa mga tourists, no, nga kanang maka-afford ra sila og kanang mga mahal nga restaurants, mahal nga hotels, mga branded and designers nga mga butang. And then, ikuan na siya sa mga locals nga, hala, like, diba, gi-mention ni Miss nga, ang mga tourists some of the tourists ay, especially sa katong mga elite nga tourists, is jet setter sila, which means trend setter. Diba? And because kay mag-set man sila og trend, of course, i-follow sa na nato, and then, diha na nasud ang negative demonstrative effect, which means nga, i-push sa mga tao nga i-copy ang unsay naa sa mga tourists. This includes the changes of people's values and behaviors that could lead to disrespect of traditions, which may also lead to disintegration of host community and the desire for wealth that may lead to people moving to cities to try and become wealthy. May term, sakto ba nga i-term na ako as nahong social climbers ang mga tao if they follow what they've seen sa mga tourists nga ni-visit sa place. Example is the inappropriate way of dressing, katong mga offensive and revealing clothes, and irresponsible behaviors, such as kanang smoking vapes and e-cigarettes. Kay mostly no, katong nauso na dyan na ang kanang vapes and e-cigarettes ay even katong mga minors, kusog na kay mag-inana. So, yeah, that's the negative demonstrative effects. So, that's all for the negative, the negative social impacts of tourism. And the next part, which is the mitigation of or impact control measures to mitigate the negative social impacts of tourism, will be reported by Ruvime. Thank you.
So, good day. I will be presenting the mitigation measures. First is to reduce the contact between the host and the guest by limiting the carrying capacity of the destination and by regulating tourist flow. So by defining and enforcing this limit, the destination can prevent overcrowding, which can lead to environmental degradation, strain on local resources, and a negative impact on the quality of life for residents. For example, if a natural park can only sustainably support 1,000 visitors per day, the authorities might restrict entry once this limit is reached. Second is separate the local and tourist within tourist flow. So tourism can sometimes disrupt the daily lives of locals due to overcrowding, noise, or changes in infrastructure. So by reducing the mingling of tourists with local residents in certain areas, the quality of life for the latter can be improved. Third is design community education and citizen involvement centered on programs, tourism development, policy, and regulatory issues. Like, for example, creating campaigns to raise awareness about local and national tourism policies and regulations, help citizens understand their rights and responsibilities in the tourism industry. Last is expand human resources development and training programs in all components of the tourism system. So, training programs can educate local communities and tourism stakeholders about the importance of preserving their cultural heritage. This knowledge helps ensure that cultural sites, traditions, and practices are respected and protected. Training equips tourism professionals with the skills to promote responsible and sustainable tourism practices. This includes educating tourists on cultural sensitivities and responsible behavior to minimize negative impacts on local customs and traditions. Next is the positive cultural impact of tourism to be presented by Nisil.
So we are now in the positive cultural impact of tourism. And there are two types of positive cultural impact of tourism: the intercultural communication and the renaissance of native culture. First, we have the intercultural communication. So what is intercultural communication? So, intercultural communication in the positive cultural impact of tourism refers to the interaction and exchange of information between people from different cultural backgrounds in the context of tourism. It plays a crucial role in enhancing the cultural experience for both tourists and local communities. Furthermore, intercultural communication is a key driver of positive cultural impacts in tourism because it promotes cultural understanding, respect, and appreciation, while also contributing to economic development and the preservation of local traditions. In the Philippines, intercultural communication in the context of tourism has led to positive cultural impacts. And here are some examples. Number one, cultural shows and performances. So, tourists often attend traditional cultural shows featuring dances, music, and rituals from various regions of the Philippines. During and after these performances, there is intercultural communication as performers explain the significance of the dances and interact with the audience, fostering an understanding of local culture. Second, local tour guides. Indigenous communities and local guides provide insights into their culture during tours. Tourists engage in conversations with these guides, learning about the customs, history, and traditions of the area they are visiting. Third, food experiences. Filipinos are known for their diverse and flavorful cuisine. When tourists visit local restaurants, street food vendors, or participate in cooking classes, they often have conversations with locals about the ingredients, cooking techniques, and cultural significance of the dishes they are trying. The fourth one is the artisan workshops. Many tourists visit communities known for traditional crafts such as weaving, pottery, and wood carving. Interacting with local artisans allows for discussions about their artistic processes and the cultural symbolism behind their creations. Fifth, we have the festivals and celebrations. The Philippines is famous for its festivals, and during these events, there is extensive intercultural communication. Locals and tourists come together to celebrate and participate in parades, dances, and other cultural activities.
So these examples illustrate how intercultural communication in the Philippine tourism enhances the cultural experiences for tourists by providing opportunities to learn, engage, and connect with the local culture, ultimately leading to a positive cultural impact. Next, we have the Renaissance of Native Culture. The renaissance of native culture in the positive cultural impact of tourism refers to how tourism can play a role in the revitalization and promotion of indigenous or native cultures. When managed responsibly, tourism can have several positive effects on native cultures. Number one, cultural exchange. Tourism can facilitate cultural exchange where visitors and locals learn from each other, fostering mutual respect and understanding. Second, economic opportunities. Tourism can provide economic opportunities for indigenous communities through the sale of traditional crafts, performances, and cultural experiences. Third, preservation of traditions. The demand for authentic cultural experiences can incentivize the preservation of traditional practices, languages, and rituals. Fourth, education. Tourism can be an educational tool, raising awareness about the history, customs, and challenges faced by native cultures. Fifth, empowerment. Indigenous communities can regain a sense of pride and self-empowerment by showcasing their cultural heritage to the world. However, it's essential that tourism is managed in a sustainable and culturally sensitive manner to prevent negative impacts such as cultural commodification, loss of authenticity, and environmental harm. Responsible and ethical tourism practices are crucial to ensure that the renaissance of native culture through tourism remains positive and mutually beneficial. In the Philippines, there are several examples of renaissance of native culture through tourism that have had a positive cultural impact. The first one, we have cultural festivals. The Philippines is known for its vibrant festivals that celebrate indigenous traditions. Events like the Panagbenga Festival in Baguio, the Kadayawan Festival in Davao, and the Pahiyas Festival in Lukban showcase native cultures, dances, and rituals. So these festivals not only attract tourists but also encourage the preservation and continuation of indigenous customs. Second, tribal villages. In various parts of the Philippines, tribal communities such as the Igorots in the Cordillera region offer cultural tours and experiences. Visitors can learn about traditional farming methods, indigenous craftsmanship, and partake in rituals. So these interactions provide income to these communities and promote their cultural heritage. Third, handicrafts and indigenous art. Indigenous communities in the Philippines produce a wide range of traditional handicrafts and artwork, so tourists can purchase items like woven fabrics, pottery, and wood carvings, directly supporting native artisans and helping keep their crafts alive. The fourth one, we have the indigenous cuisine. Local and indigenous food is a significant part of Filipino culture. Tourists can explore and savor traditional dishes like adobo, sinigang, and various regional delicacies. This is not only contributes to the local economy, but also highlights the significance of food in native culture. Fifth, cultural workshops. Some destinations in the Philippines offer cultural workshops where tourists can learn traditional dances, music, and crafts. So these workshops contribute to cultural exchange and awareness. So by integrating native culture in tourism experiences, The Philippines has been able to promote and preserve its rich cultural heritage while providing economic opportunities for indigenous communities. It's important that these interactions are conducted in a way that respects and benefits the native cultures and their environments. So that was the two types of positive cultural impact of tourism. So next topic, which is the negative cultural impacts of tourism, will be reported by our next reporter, Princess.
So now let us proceed to the negative cultural impacts of tourism. So the first one is we have destruction of a country's work of art. So works of art often represents a country's cultural heritage and serves as tangible links to its history, traditions, and identity. So when these artworks are destroyed, whether intentionally or accidentally, a significant part of the country's cultural heritage is lost forever. And this loss diminishes the cultural richness and diversity that makes a nation unique. So, an example of this is the burning of Hulu Cathedral in 1974. The attack resulted in the complete destruction of the cathedral, including its religious artworks, statues, stained glass windows, and other cultural treasure. So, the destruction of the Hulu Cathedral serves as a tragic example of the negative cultural impact of the deliberate destruction of a country's work of art, in a way that it highlights the loss of tangible and intangible cultural heritage, the disruption of religious and cultural practices, and the erosion of the collective memory and identity associated with such significant cultural sites. Other negative cultural impacts of tourism is changes in the form and function of art objects or loss of authenticity. So, art objects often carries deep cultural, historical, and symbolic meanings. So, when the form and function of these objects are altered to cater to tourist demands or commercial interests, their original cultural significance can be distorted or lost. This can lead to a superficial understanding of the artwork and the culture it represents, undermining the authenticity and depth of the cultural experience. Changes in the form and function of art objects for tourism purposes can compromise the artistic integrity of the original work. This can lead to a loss of the unique qualities and artistic value that makes the artwork significant and exceptional. The last negative cultural impact of tourism is the loss of culture. So, tourism can lead to the erosion of a community's cultural identity. When tourism becomes the dominant force shaping a destination, there is a risk of commodification and the prioritization of marketable elements of culture. This can result in the loss of authentic cultural practices, traditions, and values, as communities may be compelled to modify or abandon them to cater to tourist expectation. So an example of this is the diminishing practice of traditional indigenous rituals and ceremonies. So, as tourism has grown in certain areas, indigenous communities may face pressure to modify or abandon their traditional rituals in favor of more marketable and tourist friendly activities. So, this can be driven by the desire to attract tourists and generate income, as well as the influence of external cultural norms and expectation. The loss of these traditional rituals has several negative cultural impacts. It results in the erosion of cultural identity and the diminishing of a unique cultural practices that have been passed down through generations. It also leads to the loss of the knowledge, wisdom, and spiritual significance associated with these rituals, as the younger generations may not be exposed to or learn about them.
The last one is the mitigation measures. So there are two types of mitigation measures. The first one is to create a program that boosts tourism to encourage diverse cultural exchanges. By implementing a program where tourists can stay with local families, participate in daily activities, and learn about their customs, fostering intercultural understanding and relationship. So example of socio-cultural impact of tourism. Tourists visiting a rural village in Thailand engage with local residents, learn about their traditions, and even participate in cultural activities. This interaction leads to exchange of ideas and understanding between culture, promoting tolerance and appreciation of diversity. So the second one is to incorporate local indigenous features within Western style structure. So combine local indigenous design elements with a Western style hotel, incorporating traditional artwork and materials into the building's design, creating a unique and culturally rich experience for guests. So for example, a Western style eco-lodge with indigenous features. Imagine a Western style eco-lodge in the Pacific Northwest of the United States. This lodge is designed with sustainability in mind while incorporating local indigenous features. And that would be all. Thank you.